So it's very quiet. And when it's very quiet, we're left with the world of our thoughts. And where do our thoughts come from? It comes from our sense impressions. So whatever we attend to and we think about, ponder, is just the way it is. So these days it's common that people come and ask questions or make comments, say about the state of the world being so chaotic, and will say things like, I'm not angry, but it just makes me feel really sad. And this reminds me of a quote of Luang Por Liam that the sadness is also like an obstruction for us. So that doesn't mean anything is wrong with the world. The world is just the world, it's doing its thing. But what it means is we're still caught up in the stream of the world and attending to that and moving with it. So Luang Por Liam said when there's sadness that the defilements are pulling one down into the mire of sadness, or the mental obscurations are causing the thoughts to proliferate around things which bring sadness. And what's the antidote to that? Is to sit meditation a lot, walk meditation a lot. It'll fade away. Attend to the things that are around us in the immediate vicinity. The sky, the trees, the birds, the deer, the two deer that were laying down today by the bush in the cloister area. They were laying there all day. That was something which was kind of nice. Crickets, the insects. So these things can be things that turn the mind to the Dhamma. Dhamma and the world are like opposites. So the world is one stream, the Dhamma is another. So I think in terms of the practice, it's important not to never make mistakes, but what really helps us along in the practice is to learn how to learn from our mistakes. So anything we do as we go about our life, when we make mistakes, it's important to not get too caught in the remorse or the sadness that comes from the mistake, but to use it and learn from it. If we want to sustain the practice long term, then it's not about never failing, but it's about learning how to fail and learning how to pick ourselves up again. Because it's inevitable that we'll mess up. If we never make mistakes, that probably means we're not really going anywhere. We can freeze and stay in one place and never really move and then not make mistakes. I used to think like that, like, why did I volunteer to be the work monk if it's just causes me to make a lot of mistakes? But then in the end, that was better than not volunteering to be the work monk because I learned so much from it. And sometimes going out on a limb and trying to accomplish some task and really messing up and kind of getting frustrated, then learning a lot from that. Remember there was this tool, this jointer planer that Big Steve sold to us, one of our carpenters. He sold this tool to us. It's a jointer planer, which is a certain tool which you can take wood and run it across these rotating blades and make it flat. And this thing wasn't quite ready for use. It needed to be serviced. The blades needed to be taken off, cleaned, sharpened, put back on. And there were some screws holding these blades onto a rotating apparatus, which is part of the tool, and couldn't get all the screws out. So some of the screws would come out and some of them were just stuck. And so I was there was one screw that I just didn't seem to be able to get out. And then, so there's like 3 blades. 2 of the blades I could get the screws out, but then one of the blades I couldn't get this particular screw out. And then even when I could get the screws out, the blades were kind of stuck to this rotating bearing. And so I had to pry these blades off with a screwdriver. They would pop out. And I was starting to get a bit impatient because it was literally kind of days of work just to try to take this thing apart. And there was this, because I had gotten impatient, I had forgot this screw was still in, and I tried to pry this particular piece of the thing out, and it seemed to kind of be moving, and then I thought it was going to come out, and then it broke in half. And so this one part was broken in half. And just thinking, okay, well, we'll have to order a new part for it. And then got online and found out that the tool is old enough that they don't sell replacement parts for it anymore. So I think, okay. So then, okay, this piece is broken in half. I still got to get this screw that's stuck out. So eventually I did get this screw out, and then I had these two pieces of this broken thing which holds the blade in place. So took another 2 or 3 days and very, very carefully welded the piece together and straightened it out and made it back into a whole piece and put the whole thing back together, and it worked well enough. But I think the moral of the story is because I was rushing, then I failed to notice what was happening, and then the job actually took longer than it should have. And I was pretty embarrassed. It wasn't fun to admit to Ajahn Pasano that I had broken this tool that we had paid for. And part of me was thinking, why did I even attempt it? We should have just left it and never used it. Part of me was thinking that. But I did learn a lot from that particular experience. Sometimes it doesn't seem to make sense. It seems like, why do this? It's too frustrating. Why take a chance? Why even try to get this thing working? Then that's how learning takes place. There's the requisite frustration, and then we start to see, okay, well, this shows me ways that I can adjust in the future. As the same with the Buddha, he did these incredible austerities, and those were a mistake. But then, because of those austerities, he learned that that wasn't the path to enlightenment. So would it have been better if he never did the austerities? I would think probably not, because then he wouldn't have learned that that wasn't the path. Even after his enlightenment, the Buddha has this utterance where he says, I'm well freed from those ridiculous austerities, those useless austerities. And then Mara appears and comes to the Buddha and says, you've now embraced the path of laziness, the path of luxury. You've given up your austerities. And as the Buddha says something to Mara, well, I'm enlightened now, it doesn't matter. You don't know how useless those austerities are, and Mara disappears. So the Buddha was able to discern these things and see what was useful, what wasn't useful. Or I think even of something like when I was newly ordained, I had this idea of wanting to do a lot of work for the monastery and make merit, partly to make up for things I had done in lay life, which I felt like I needed to do some sort of penance for to make me feel better about it. And one thing I offered to do was expand our water system in terms of we had this spring across Tomkai Road, which we get our water from, but then there was this well that we had tapped up on the ridge, but there was no water lines coming from it yet. There was no, we weren't using it yet. And so I had the idea, okay, well, maybe I'll do this water system and look after workers, organize all the workers, put the whole thing together, plan it out, and do this project. And so I was pretty much working all day, every day on this project. Overseeing maybe 2 or 3 groups of workers doing different things at any given time. And we didn't have our little golf cart vehicles then like we do now. We didn't have the DV or the EV. So anytime we went up to do work on the ridge, it was walking with buckets of tools up to the ridge. And I would remember things like I would have all my tools with me and walk up to the ridge and be doing my penance and this incredible kind of workout. And then I would do the work, and then I would have forgotten one fitting or have to walk all the way down and get it. And so as this project went on, and it was way more extensive and way more difficult than I thought it was going to be, then I started suffering a lot over it, getting really frustrated, getting even angry, resentful. Why did I do this? What did I get myself into? And fortunately, Ajahn Pasano had a lot of compassion for me, so he was giving me encouragement and making sure I was okay. But still, I was starting to feel really down, really frustrated. Then remember Lungpa Liam came and visited, and at this point I'd never been to Thailand before, and this was the first time I had an opportunity to interact with Lungpa Liam. And remember one day I went to give him a foot massage with Ajahn Prateep, who spoke good enough English to translate, and I brought up this issue of this water project, and I said, well, so I'm doing this project, I'm really suffering a lot. Is it better just to not do it? You know, if I feel like it's bringing up a lot of defilement and I'm suffering a lot and it's kind of making me angry, frustrated sometimes, and is it better just to not do something like this, just to not take it on? And he said, no, without a doubt, it's better to do it. He said, this is mahadana, this is generosity, so this is something you cultivate. And he said that, I don't know what the saying in Thai is exactly, but he said there's a saying in Thai which means something like, if you suffer for the sake of others, then it comes back to you more. The happiness that results comes back to you more in a higher proportion than the suffering you underwent. So it gave me a lot of encouragement. I think this is like Ajahn Pasano too. He's talking about don't hold back, and this is just something we do. We hold back and we just kind of stay in our comfort zone. Don't really push the boundaries, and because of that, we pretty much tend to stay where we're at. That's why also why Luang Por Chah would do these things like the Wanpra, where we stay up at night and we're tired, we want to go to sleep, but we just give rise to our energy, so we just go against that feeling, and we just stay up, and we're all in it together. Builds up a sense of camaraderie. It's like shared difficulties in the monastery, and that we're, in a sense, we're united in those difficulties. So let's say the sikha, the training, the learning. So this kind of thing gives rise to discernment as well. What works, what doesn't work, what has worked in the past. We have to review what effects our actions have had in the past and internalize that and see it with mindfulness, and then we can stop doing things that are harming ourselves. And then the yoniso manasikara, like the wise attention, the way we attend to things, it's really important. Because if we attend properly, then it'll be almost automatic that we don't pick things up which are harmful. And nobody needs to tell us or teach us this. It's like if we put our hand in a candle flame, nobody needs to teach us to pull it away as fast as we can. We don't need to wait to read the manual or for somebody to tell us to pull our hand out of the flame, but it just happens automatically. Or like there's a story where there was a monk at Wat Pah and is doing some work with some electric wires, and he was holding these wires, and then one of them like shocked him, and he dropped them on the ground. And Luang Por Chah was walking by, and he said, "Why did you drop those? Who told you to?" And when we really see and notice that it's heavy and that it hurts, then we drop it. But because there's not that wise attention, the attention is going somewhere else. The attention is distracted. The attention isn't noticing the suffering. But it is pretty subtle. It's kind of stuff is hard to see. That sense of like holding things, it's all connected with the sense of self, who we are, who we think we are. This is a heavy burden. This sense of having to be somebody, having to become somebody. It's heavy, but it's like we've been holding it for so long. Don't know what it feels like to set it down. Then we decide to set things down. It's light, it feels like a sense of ease, a sense of comfort. Now we just have to know that for ourselves, have to make enough mistakes that we learn it, figure it out. So I think that's about all I can think of to say this evening. I'll leave it there.